With us now, live from our affiliate WFAA in Dallas, is Dr. Kenneth Cooper, director of the Aerobics Center in that city, and also founder of the Institute for Aerobics Research, which has been gathering data on the medical effects of exercise. Today, Dr. Cooper opened a 3-day conference in Dallas on the subject, Fitness Issues for the 80s. And joining us in our New York studios is Dr. Henry Solomon, a heart specialist at New York Hospital and a faculty member at Cornell Medical College in New York. Dr. Solomon is also a medical consultant to the New York Foundation of Senior Citizens. Dr. Cooper, let's start with what is still the bottom line for many people, namely the idea that exercise can prolong life. What is the state of evidence that that is so, and what kind of exercise does it take to accomplish that?
Well, Tim, in my book, Running Without Fear, I said we didn't really have any good factual data documenting whether exercise does prolong life. But we know since then, Dr. Papenbarger's study on the Harvard alumni shows that exercising at 2,000 calories per week could extend the life up to 2 years of those people who exercise during the middle years at that level of activity.
Now, what does that translate into practical? When you say 2,000 calories, what does that translate into in practical terms?
All right, the press is interpreting that as meaning since you roughly burn 100 calories per mile, you must walk or run 20 miles a week. But Dr. Papenbarger's study actually included such things as walking to the store, walking to your car, walking up and down stairs, plus your exercise program. And that combination of activities, if it was at 2,000 kilocalories per week, did extend life up to 2 years. So that's the best scientific data we have today to document that exercising regularly during the middle-age years can prolong life.
You regard that as smoking gun evidence?
I regard that as the best evidence that we have to date. Now, one of the deficiencies in Dr. Papenbarger's study that has been brought out by Dr. Solomon and others is that most information regarding exercise habits is based on questionnaire. At the Aerobic Institute for the past 15 years, we've been following some 52,000 patients and now have some 214,000 man-years of follow-up on those patients. But you see, their level of fitness hasn't been determined by questionnaire. It's actually been measured by their time on the treadmill. You give us another 5 to 10 years and we'll have undeniable data to show you whether measured levels of physical fitness does correlate with the prolongation of life.
All right, Dr. Solomon, what do you think about the evidence to date and about this possible coming evidence?
As Dr. Cooper knows, I've been critical of Dr. Papenbarger's work, and the idea that you can prolong life by exercise is simply not true. The idea was, in fact, debunked in the New England Journal after Dr. Papenbarger's data was presented. And it's been wisely said that if you did extend your life, the only thing you could do with the extra time would be to run up and down the stairs. The data of life prolongation are absolutely unproven.
All right, Dr. Cooper, a slightly different view of the Papenbarger data.
Dr. Papenbarger followed the Harvard alumni for at least 20 years and could show unequivocally, as far as I'm concerned, and most of the scientific investigators who've been following studies of this type for years, that he had the first quantifiable data showing that a certain amount of physical activity did in fact prolong life. Now let me elaborate something in Dr. Solomon's book. He continually lists inactivity or physical activity, physical fitness is one of the lowest coronary risk factors. One reason for that over the years has been we've had no means of actually measuring fitness. It's been too subjective, not objective. Let me again hasten to say, with the measurement of fitness as we're doing here at the Institute for Aerobics Research in Dallas, with up to 1,300 people exercising each day, punching in their data, they now have run in excess of 6 million miles. We have data on 1.25 million hours of exercise during the past 15 years. I think we can begin to put some objective statistics to some of those questions that we've had in the past.
All right, Dr. Solomon, if you were going to define a level of exercise that would be reasonable for people past age 50, how would you put it?
I think that everybody ought to exercise in accordance with what the needs and desires of their life are. I have no quarrel with the idea that exercise produces fitness. I've said so repeatedly. In fact, it's the only way to become fit. What I have said repeatedly also is that fitness and health are two different things. Do not confuse them. If your lifestyle requires you to be a runner, and the only people whose lifestyle requires that are professional athletes who get paid for it, and muggers and pickpockets. The rest of us can do our very happy life's activities with less physical fitness and therefore do not have to enroll in vigorous programs. And here the key word is vigorous. I'm not against exercise. I've been in favor of modest, moderate exercise for everybody. But it's the strenuous activity that will get you into terrible trouble, particularly if you're over 50 and even especially over 60.
All right, when we come back, we'll pick up on the issue of danger involved at certain levels of exercise, because that certainly seems to be one of the key points of contention between the two of you and between the points of view you represent. So we will address ourselves very directly to the question of possible dangers from vigorous exercise when we come back. Continuing our discussion now with Dr. Kenneth Cooper in Dallas and Dr. Henry Solomon in New York. As I understand it, you both would agree that vigorous exercise produces fitness or training effects, a lowered heart rate, lowered blood pressure, etc. What you disagree about is whether or not that is actually healthy in the long run, whether or not it might even be dangerous. Dr. Solomon, you believe that such kinds of exercise as is characteristic of the aerobic movement can actually be dangerous. How dangerous?
Well, if you consider the ultimate danger that of dying, then aerobics will certainly get you that goal. If you look at the statistics on sudden death, for example, which is a concern to all cardiologists, the incidence of sudden cardiac death during vigorous exercise is extraordinarily high compared to that rate of death.
Specifically?
Well, 7 to 9 times greater during jogging, for example, than during more sedentary activities. And if you're not used to exercise and occasionally do it, the rate can go up to 5,000 times as great. But even regular exercisers run a risk of, at minimal, a 500% increase every time they put their sneakers on.
Dr.
Can I
Cooper?
interrupt, Tim? Yes,
No,
I
absolutely.
disagree with that. And first of all, I'd like to ask Dr. Solomon why he misquoted statistics in my book. In his book, page 119, we talked about the risk of exercise. We documented in the Journal of the American Medical Association in 1980 the risk that we'd had over a 65-month period here at the Aerobic Center in Dallas, with 374,000 hours of exercise involving some 3,000 people. And the actual statistics was no deaths, 0.3 to 2.7 non-fatal cardiac events every 10,000 hours of exercise, published in 1980. In Dr. Solomon's book, I'd like to know why he misread that, and it came out 0.3 to 2.7 cardiac deaths or non-fatal events. Up until that time, that 65-month period, we had never had a death.
Dr.
Let me
Solomon?
elaborate, too. Let me elaborate something else.
All right.
We now have passed 5 million miles, the Aerobic Center in Dallas, Texas, 6 billion miles, rather. We now have 1.25 million hours of exercise. We've had 2 non-fatal events and 1 fatal event in 15 years. That doesn't sound like there's a 500-fold increase in likelihood of sudden death if people exercise regularly.
In your court, Dr. Solomon?
2 points to be made. Number one, Dr. Cooper's own data, I think, condemn his remarks. He quoted a statistic of 2 to 27 in males now, 2 to 27 deaths per 1,000 exercisers.
Dr. Solomon, that is incorrect, and you know that.
Risk estimates, I'm sorry, it's in your paper, and if you
Well, he's the author of the paper, so...
Well, you only have to read it, Dr. Johnson.
It wasn't 2 to 27. It was 0.3 to 2.7 per 10,000 people, 10,000 hours of
man-hours, and if you count the number of people doing that exercise only 3 times a week, 30 minutes,
Dr.
make
Solomon,
the
we're not talking
calculation.
about that. I'm talking about the way you abuse the data I published in my article in
no,
1980.
Sir. Your data, I think your data condemn your position.
Well, we're obviously getting
Now,
lost in numbers here that our audience is going to understand, but we have two
I agree with you, Tim, but I think the point is that everybody who has looked at it, except Dr. Cooper perhaps, even people who are advocates of vigorous exercise will admit that the sudden death rate during your activity is markedly enhanced. The New England Journal studies, the studies in Europe, everywhere.
Dr.
There's
Solomon,
simply no question.
that is a misrepresentation of the data, and you know that.
All right, let's get off the question of this danger, because obviously we're not going to reconcile the numbers that the two of you
Let me
are.
add one point first, though, Tim.
All right.
7-fold increase in sudden deaths among people exercising is a Siskovic study. But Siskovic went on to say in the same study that those exercisers were 40% less likely to have a heart attack long term than the sedentary people.
No, sir.
Let's
All right,
give
now,
those proper perspective.
data were
Let me
Dr.
turn a corner
Thompson's,
here.
but
We're
okay.
going to get lost in data here. What about the other documented benefits that various studies are now showing, that exercise will reduce blood pressure, will reduce resting heart rate, will reduce cholesterol levels, may increase so-called good cholesterol? What do you think of those studies? Dr. Solomon first, and then Dr. Cooper.
I guess I'd have to ask you why everybody only quotes those studies which say what you've said and neglect to indicate the vast array of data presented to the American College of Sports Medicine, for example, that shows that the physical fitness that comes with exercise has no good relationship to improvement in blood pressure, improvement in blood fats, or any other recognized cardiac risk factor.
All right, Dr. Cooper, in fact, from your institute, those studies show that kind of data correlation, though, don't they?
That is correct, Tim. We have published 2 articles in the last 2 years showing a direct correlation between measured levels of fitness and systolic and diastolic blood pressure. Went on to point out last November 1985 that in response to vigorous exercise, there was a normalization of an elevation of the serum catecholamines. That's the hormones that come from the adrenal glands that in many cases can be associated with hypertension. We have undeniable cross-sectional data and longitudinal data, as have many people in the field, to show a relationship between measured levels of fitness and hypertension and a lowering of blood pressure.
All right, we've obviously got a lot of disagreement here between the two of you on this data. When we come back, what I want you to do is boil down your own personal viewpoint into some very straightforward, simple advice as to what you would tell people past age 50 to do in terms of exercise. How much, what kind, how often. When we come back, we'll ask you for that advice. All right, each of you a 50-second prescription for exercise advice for people past age 50. Dr. Solomon?
Very simple. Over 50 or under, everybody should do a modest amount of exercise every day. The best exercise in the world for everybody is walking. Try to walk a mile twice a day. If you can't, once a day. Try to do it at 20-minute pace. If you can't do a 20-minute mile, do it a bit slower, but do the mile. A warning, don't be seduced into doing more vigorous exercise. You don't have to join an exercise club. Don't be seduced into having an unnecessary stress test. Don't be seduced into doing anything that your sense doesn't tell you is right for you.
Okay, Dr.
Walk
Cooper,
every day.
Is a mile twice a day enough?
Paul W. White once said, it's fascinating to know that one can grow healthier as one grows older and not necessarily the reverse. If you want to do that, you must eliminate 3 things in this order. Number 1, cigarette smoking. Number 2, obesity. And number 3, inactivity. Progress slowly into your program. Moderate your exercise. If you're past 40 years of age, have a maximal performance treadmill stress test to determine, first of all, whether or not you have any signs of heart disease, and secondly, what is a safe exercise prescription for you. That's my recommendation, Tim, and we have the data to back up the safety of those recommendations.
And what kind of level would you like to see achieved, assuming that there are no signs of heart disease, no symptoms of such?
One of these combinations, at least 20 minutes with a heart rate slightly above 140, 4 times a week, 30 minutes heart rate slightly above 130, 3 to 4 times a week, or finally a heart rate of only 110 for 45 minutes, 4 to 5 times a week, and that's literally walking 3 miles, 4 to 5 times a week at a 15 to 16 minute per mile pace.
All right, it would seem on the walking issue that you're both sort of coming together in some common middle ground. And all I can do at this point is to say to our audience, they've got their books on the marketplace. You can read them, try to make your own decisions. We do appreciate both of you for joining us tonight. Tomorrow on Nightline, a different perspective on a topic that will not go away. Of some 23,000 AIDS cases to date, only a few hundred have involved both husband and wife as victims. But those numbers are increasing, and tomorrow we'll see in microcosm what may lie ahead as we look at the impact, both emotional and physical, on one family that has literally been torn apart by AIDS. That's our report for tonight. I'm Dr. Timothy Johnson in New York. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.